Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your tangled yogi out here in Northern California. How are you? Welcome to our word of the year for 2023. I'm so excited to share this with you, and I know we're going to have such a great time creating it. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need for class today. You're going to want to have your micron PN pen. I happen to have an O1 today, but you can use your PN as well. You're going to have your white gel pen. I'm using the Mizu Love, but you can use a Signo or you can use a Sakura. Either one will work. I'll be working with a graphite pencil and a tortillon for this class. If you don't have a tortillon, you can always use a Q-tip in lieu of that. I'm also going to be working on a tile that's 4.5 by 4.5. So if you've got some nice smooth paper that you can put a square of 4.5 and 4.5 on, that's all you need for creating class today. All right, let's get started with the word of the year. So many of you know that I really like to take a moment to get settled before we start tangling. So let's take a comfortable seated position, however that best works for you inside of your body today. And allow yourself to settle in. Let your feet touch down onto the floor here. Let your shoulders melt away from your ears, allowing your hands to rest into your lap. And allowing your eyes to close if you're all right with that, or taking a soft gaze downward. Allowing your breath now to be soft and full, and just letting your attention follow the breath in and follow the breath out. Breathing in to the count of 4. Hold the breath in for 4. And exhaling to the count of 8. Breathing in for 4. Hold for 4. And exhaling to the count of 8. Last time. In for 4. Hold for 4. And exhaling for 8. And just for a moment here, thinking of your word of the year. Hopefully you've had a chance to look over the list that was attached to this video. And just thinking about how your word makes you feel. And maybe noticing where you feel it in your body. Maybe you feel it in your chest or your belly, your shoulders, your throat. Maybe it makes you feel inspired or excited. So whatever it is, just acknowledging it and holding that word close as we begin our practice today. Starting to wiggle your fingertips and your toes, taking in a nice deep breath, letting it go with a sigh, and blinking the eyes open. And let's begin. So let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to start by bringing my dots into my corners. I'm using a graphite pencil. And I'm going to go ahead and connect my dots. You can see that my lines are fairly light here. We're going to be breaking the borders a lot in this piece. And so for our string today, what we're going to do is we're going to be working with this tile on the diamond instead of the square. And I'm going to come up to the top and we're going to create a flag. So I'm going to zoom in on this here up at the top. And the flag is going to go a little something like this. I'm going to come in with my graphite pencil and I'm going to make a little bit of an arc that's going to go across towards the top. So you can see I've got a little bit of an arc there, and I'm going to come down now and I'm going to create these little side parts of our banner. And then I'll come down and do another arc right underneath it. Once I have that, I'm going to come in right about 1/4 of an inch down and create a little bit of a line that's going to come out from each side. I'm going to make a little bit of a triangle-like shape. And then underneath, I'm going to make a little piece that's going to come out and meet those triangular-like shapes. And this is where our word of the year is going to go. Now, if you have a bigger word of the year than I do, you can always make your flag a little bit bigger, okay? So there you have the flag that's going to divide the space up top, and our little birds will sit up there, okay? So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to tangle. So I've picked up my Micron 01. If you want to use your PN or any of your favorite Tangle pens, you're welcome to use them. And I'm just going to go ahead and ink in my little flag here that I've created. And you can see that I'm taking my time. And this is a great place to clean up your lines if you were unhappy with any of your lines. And then I'm going to come in and ink in my flag on both sides. And you can see that I'm breaking my border almost right away. I just think it makes it more interesting. And so there you can see I've got my banner for my word of the year. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start by coming down at the bottom here, and we're going to start to fill in the spaces. And I'm going to create a really beautiful flower that we're going to use Walk the Line in. So I'm going to come in right into this area right down here. I'm going to come up from the bottom, I would say about 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches, and I'm going to do a nice circle. Now inside of this circle, I'm going to do some tipple. That's going to make a really nice centerpiece for this flower. So there you can see I've got the centerpiece. And I'm going to start to build now my flower, and I'm going to do a nice fairly large petal. And then I'm going to do a petal over here, and this one will break the border. And I'm going to do a petal over here, and this one will break the border. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and do another petal over here, and let it come in, and another petal over here, and let it come in. So we've got a nice 5-pointed flower there. I'm going to do some smaller petals right on the outside edge, just like so. And then we're going to go ahead and come right into the center of the first petal, and we're going to do flux, the tangle flux, which is just an upside down teardrop. And then we'll go ahead and drop down and drop down. I'm going to turn my tile and do it again. And this is where you can really get into the zen of what you're doing, because there's so much repetition in this particular tangle. I'm just taking my time. You can see I'm not rushing. Just bringing yourself to the present moment. Finally coming around. Once I have that, I'm going to go into the outer pieces as well. Still turning. And one more time. Now once I've had a chance to go all the way around with this piece, I'm going to come back in and I'm going to do some puddling. Puddling means you're pooling your ink, and we're going to go into these really funny little triangular-like shapes, our interstices here. And you're going to see me just start to puddle in or pool my ink into those places. And what you're going to find is that's going to give this a very graphic kind of feel. So you can see that that really does give it a nice graphic feel. I'm going to go to each of my petals and do that very same thing. You go ahead and do yours, I'll finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work on another flower. Have fun, relax, and enjoy. Okay, so you can see that I've had a chance to go all the way around. I even filled in the interstices that were in my head of the flower here so that it gave that center a little bit of a pop. Now we're going to come in and do 2 flowers on either side of this first flower in here. And this flower I came across in a YouTube video by Eva Wu. And so I'm going to turn this over and we're going to learn a tangle. And you know, it was so funny because Eva, and I'm just going to write her name here, Eva Wu, she did not have a name for this flower. And so, you know, I said to her, I said, we should name it Woo Woo. I thought that that would be kind of a fun name for her flower. And she said, any name is fine. So, Eva, this is for you. And this is Woo Woo. So we're going to call it Woo Woo. And I'm going to just show you how this works. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating some Bronx cheer right in the center of Woo Woo, and that is a cluster of tipple. Now we'll come in and we'll blacken these in, and that will make it a Bronx cheer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these little lines that are going to come out from our piece here. And you can see that it almost looks like I'm drawing a person. Can you see that it has the head, the arms, and the legs? Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in not to the center of Bronx cheer, but I'm going to come out a little bit, and I'm going to create these petal-like shapes. Coming down and over, up, and in. So we end up with this kind of petal-like shape. And then I'm going to come in to where this little dive is, and I'm going to create these little loops. You can do it any which way it feels right to you. And that is going to be part of what makes Woo 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 Woo. And so now you can come in and you can fill in with your pen, if you want to, some nice light sources here into your Bronx cheer. And you can see that my pen is a little bit small for doing all this pedaling, but it'll work out for just the demo of this. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to fill in my little lines. So you can see that I'm just going over what I just did. And it's very early in the morning here, so my lines aren't exactly the quality that I would hope they would be, but they are what they are this morning. And as in Zentangle, we just honor what is today. And then I'll pedal these in. Now once I've had an opportunity to puddle all these in, you can handle those lines however you would like to. You can make them dotted, you can make them solid, you can do whatever you want with them. And I'm speaking of these lines right here, so I'm just going to come in and I think I'm just going to make them interrupted. I think that might be interesting today. Almost as if they're stitched. And then you could add another dot right out into the border. So that is Woo Woo by Eva Wu. All right, so let's go ahead and put that into the composition. All right, so I've turned over my tile here, and I'm going to use this particular petal as my guide. I'm just going to come over a little bit, and I'm just going to make a dot right there so that I can begin Woo Woo. And so I'm going to start by making my Bronx cheer. And I'll go ahead and add my light source now so that I don't lose it later. And then once I've got my Bronx cheer in, I'm going to start to build my person here. So it's going to go up and out, and then I'm going to start to build the arms out, and then I'm going to start to build my legs out. So there's my little person in there, and I'm going to now start to begin to bring the petals around. You can see that I broke the border there, which is always fun. Once I've got the flower in, let's go ahead and zoom in on this. We're going to start to bring in those little loop-de-loos. So I'm just going to come in, create a loop, and move on. Turning my tile, create a loop, and move on. Turning my tile, create the loop, and move on. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and start to puddle. Taking your time with the puddling here. And this is where you can, clean up any lines if your lines are a little shaky like mine are this morning. I haven't had my coffee yet. The kettle is boiling. I can hear it in the other room. Now once I have that, isn't it amazing how that just starts to clean up the flower in such a nice way? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to build these outer petals that are going to come in and attach. You can see I'm turning my tile. And one more time. And then I'm going to go in and add, just from the center, a nice line that's going to go straight out. And this one is so much fun to shade. I really love this flower for shading. It's got a lot of personality. I'm going to go ahead and add a dot to the outside of Woo Woo. And if you want to bring a dot on the inside as well for these inner petals, you can. Such a fun, easy flower to do. Let's go ahead and add it on the other side. So I'm going to use this as my guide, and I'm just going to go to the other side in here and just place a little dot so I know where to start, and then that way I'm going to get a little bit of balance here. So I'm just going to start by creating my Bronx cheer, and you want to have it be similar in size if you want to get some nice balance. You can see that I'm going to puddle in, pulling in my ink here. And you know, I'm always amazed every time I come back and do a tangle. It always comes out a little bit different, and that's just because I'm a different person than the day that I created it the first time. So I'm just going to come in and start to build my person. Give him his legs. And then I'll start to build my petals. I'm going to make this one just a little bit taller. And here we go. So you can see that I'm not coming into the Bronx cheer, I'm staying on the outside. And this one might fall off the page. Yep, it sure did. Love that. You know me, I like to play the edge. I had to do a little bit of picking up and putting down my pen because I didn't want to intersect over here. And then one more petal right there. Once I've got my petals, I'm going to do my exterior petals. And then I'm going to go ahead and start to bring these around, taking my time. And then I'll go ahead and I will puddle. Still turning. And then I'm going to come in straight out and create some interest. And what I love about this tangle and why it works so well with that first flower that we had is because it's got its own kind of graphic nature to it. This had a lot of black in it, and this has got some black in it too, which is interesting to me. Now, I think I kind of want to add a little something to this particular one just to give it a little bit of pizzazz. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and round out these areas in between. So you can see that I'm going to kind of pool my ink right where we've got these little corners here, just to give it some extra interest. Now, Eva didn't do this on hers, but you know, it's just a tangulation. It's a variation on the theme. I think I'm going to go ahead and add that to the other one as well. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add in some other tangles. Okay, so you can see that I've gone ahead and I've added my rounding in all of these, and I'm really loving the way those turned out. This is such a great flower to do, and you really can't mess it up because, it just has such a fun feel to it. So let's talk about the next tangle. Many of you know that I love the tangle tipple, but I use it too much, and I wanted to give a little variation to it. So I've been talking about a tangle called Poppins quite a bit, and Poppins has two different variations on it. You can do Poppins like this, where you do a little bit of a U, and then you go ahead and you put a little circle in, and you can create this kind of berry-like shape. Now, another way to do Poppins is to do tipple and put the flower-like shape in the center, and it almost looks like the top of a blueberry when you shade it, which is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over, and you can do Poppins any way that you want to. I don't want you to feel like you have to do it a certain way. And I'm going to use Poppins on my edges here. So I'm going to come over right in here, and I'm going to throw in a fairly large one. And I'll come into the center, and when we shade this, we'll make it look like a blueberry. I'll come in over to the side here and add another one, fairly large. You can see I'm breaking the border, having some fun with that. And then I'm going to do, I think I'm going to do one right in here, and I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to come over to the other side just to bring in a little bit of balance. So I'll go ahead and create some of that Poppins over here. And I think I'll add one over here. And just for kicks, I think I'll put one in right in here. Now you can see that I've stayed away from the flag, and we're going to be doing an aura that goes around all of this in a minute. So I'm leaving some space between my flag and the rest of my tangles. So go ahead and add your Poppins, and if there's any other places that you want to add Poppins, you can. Like I think I might add in a Poppins over here. And maybe I could add one down over here. It's just going to be kind of bursting with berry flavor. Let's see if I can close this off and make it look more orb-like. And maybe one down at the bottom just for fun. I have this really nice space in here. Alright, so you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to add in some gemstones and some other tangles in here before we finish. So have some fun with that. Okay, so we're going to add in a couple of interesting pieces to this. What I wanted to do is I wanted to give it kind of like a toy-like feel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to add some fairly large circles in here. So you're going to see me come in here and add a nice large circle. And it's not a perfect circle, and it doesn't have to be. And inside of that circle, we're going to add a tangle into this. And this is what we would consider a fragment. And that's where you just take part of a pattern and put it in. And so I'm just going to come in and I'm going to create a little bit of a present-like feel with the circle and then the lines coming in. And then I'm going to create an aura inside of the fragment. And then I'll do it again. And you really just want to take your time with it. And then inside of those last triangles, I'm going to puddle. So once again, using your ink to create a graphic nature inside of the tangles, but also having them be related to each other with that ink. It gives them symmetry, it gives balance to the piece. Now, I think I'm going to throw a couple of these around just to give this kind of a bouncing feel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over into this corner here, and I'm going to have one that's just going to float right off the page. And so you can see that I'm going to come right into the center of it and start to build my lines and then my auras. And then I'll aura again in the places where I can. And I'll come in and puddle. Taking my time. And one more right over here. Now let's go ahead and throw another one of those in here just to make it interesting. So let's see where we can put this. I think where I'm going to go with it is maybe right over in here. Seems like a kind of fun spot. I think I'm gonna keep it on the edge actually. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna come over to the edge, bring a little bit of balance, but you can throw yours wherever you want to. And I'm making these bigger than the Poppins so that we get some differentiation in size. Coming in and doing my auras. And then I'm going to puddle. So you go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine. And when we come back, we're going to throw in some gemstones just to make it feel kind of Christmassy and celebratory, yeah? All right, you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. So I always like to have a little bit of gemstones for a festive feel in my pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to do almost a square-like shape right in here, or a rectangular-like shape that's just coming off of my flower here. And then I'm going to do a little aura, and we'll turn that into a gemstone a little bit later. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to add one over here just to give it a little bit of balance. And then maybe I'll do some kind of, I'm going to make it kind of oval-ish. Coming in and creating that internal aura for another gemstone. Now, if you see any spots that you'd like to add a gemstone, you can. I might come down over here and add another one of those kind of ovalish ones. Let's see, where else can I add one? Maybe one over here. This could be fun. So wherever you've got a spot that you think might be fun, go ahead and put yours in. So there I've got my piece the way that I want it with the gemstones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to create an aura. But I'll show you how this aura is going to work. We're going to start to build out our piece here. So I'm going to come up into the corner here and build this corner in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down, and right before I get to my whole tangle in here, I'm going to stop. I'll do the same thing over here, and I stop. So now what I'm going to do, and let's zoom in on this here, getting this nice and close for you. You can see that I've paused before the berries here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and start to build this really fun aura that goes across the top. I'm going to go up and around my gemstones. And over, and then it's going to connect to the side there. And so now you can see that I've got this space where my flag is going to be, where it's going to have more of a solid color, and then all of this down here is going to have lots of fun color. Now what I'm going to do is down at the bottom, I'm going to come in where my border was, and I'm going to look for places where I can add it. But you'll notice that I'm picking up my pen and putting it down so that I'm not intersecting any of those tangles that are on that side. And that tends to hold in a little bit of the chaos that we've got down in here. Isn't that so fun, the way that that holds it in? I personally enjoy that. So go ahead, do your border, and then when we come back, we're going to look into our word and our special guests that are going to be at top. So let's come into our banner here. I've picked up my graphite pencil. Now, doing lettering can sometimes be a little tricky, so I like to use my graphite pencil. It just makes it a little bit more confident for me. And my word of the year this year is going to be peace, and the reason for that is I'm just looking for more ways in which I can bring peace into my life. And so you're going to see me do all uppercase, and I'm doing it with a little bit of spacing between my letters here. And so I'm just gently going through with my letters, and I think I've got a pretty good spacing of them. Now what you're going to see me do is I'm going to come into where those letters are, and I'm going to ink them in. And you really want to take your time with this. You'll notice that on my A and my E, I'm not crossing them. I'm going to be using a little trick that I learned from my friend Susan Moen. She did a Macintosh font class, and I thought it was so pretty, I'm going to use it here. So I'm going to go ahead and come down and create this little line that's going to go behind each of my letters here. And then for my E and my A, I'm going to put a circle. And I just think that that has such a nice festive feel to it. So that's going to be my word of the year. And whatever your word of the year is, you can just place it in using that idea of having the line come back behind your letter. Okay? Now, to do my birds, I'm going to come up top and create these two little lines that are almost like a diagonal. So I'm going to come into this one right here and do a little line, and this one right here and do a little line. So you'll notice that they're separated from each other. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to create the letter D, and that's just going to make it pop down. And at the back end of D, I'm going to add a little line. I'm going to come over to the other side and do the same. And then I'm going to bring down their feet. So a nice little line with a triangle at the bottom of it. And the same thing here, a line with a triangle and a line with a triangle. Now I'm going to give my birdies their beaks. And then I'm going to give them their eyes. And then you can do whatever pattern you want inside of these. I'm going to do a little bit of a crescent moon in here. And maybe on that second aura, I'm going to do some thatching. And I'll do the same thing over here. And so there are our two special guests for our piece. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to add a little bit more detailing to our flag. So I'm just going to add a little bit of detailing into my flag here, just by creating a little internal aura right on the flaps in here, just to make it a little bit interesting. And I'll come over to the other side and do the same. Now, if you have room around your word, you could always add an aura around your word too. I didn't leave any space around my word this time around, but maybe in class today when I teach you all, I will have some space to put in a little bit of an aura. You can, do whatever you like with that. It's just an option. So go ahead and have fun with that. And then when we come back, it's time for color. So we are going to get ourselves started here. I'm going to be working with 3 different colors here. So I have the Sunburst Yellow, which is PC917, and I also have in my hand the Cadmium Orange, which is PC118, and then I also have in my hand Magenta, which is PC930. Let's go ahead and focus in on our flower here that we have, and I'm going to start with the yellow first. Now you can see that my pencil is all sharpened up, and I'm going to be working on the side of the lead here, and we're going to be working in a soft circular motion. You can see that I'm just barely touching the page here as I bring in that yellow. This yellow is a really strong yellow, and so I don't need to push hard on the paper to get the color to take. So if you are heavy-handed, I want you to think of you're just dusting the page with a feather. You're not going hard with it. So just coming in and adding that yellow in, and you can see that I'm turning the page. Oh, I can see that I missed a spot where I needed to puddle. There's always one that gets away. And I'm just going to keep making my way around that flower here. Really soft little circles. Not a lot of pressure. Now once I've had a chance to get all the way around, I'm going to pick up that cadmium orange, and I've been really partial to this orange lately, so if you don't have it in your set, you may want to check it out. You can always pick up these in singular color pencils from Blix, which is always nice. So you're going to see me come in, and I'm going to start to dust just the tips of the petals. You can see I'm coming about halfway down each petal. So just little circles, just like so. working on the side of the pencil. We're trying to use the pencil as efficiently as we possibly can. Just turning, turning, turning. And for me, this is where the Zen really comes in. It's just one of those things where I can just let my mind relax and just focus on the color. There's been many studies about how color lights up the brain, and they've found that it actually releases an endorphin that gives the body a little bit of relaxation. So color is a wonderful thing to work with. Now, once I've had a chance to go all the way around, you're going to see me come towards the center and start to bring in this really soft shadow around the center. I'm going still very lightly with that orange. Now, once I've brought that shadow in towards the center, you're going to notice that a meta highlight has showed up. Look at how pretty that highlight is that has shown up just by adding that shadow in the center. And you can see that I'm not trying to make it perfect. I want it to have a little bit of movement to it. And then even in these little valleys that we have here, I'm going to dip in and add a little bit of orange into those valleys of those second petals so that I get that highlight that even comes out there. Can you see how those even have a highlight in the center now? Once I have that, I'm going to pick up my magenta. This is the PC930. I want to make sure that it's really well sharpened up because we're going to be working on the outside edge. So I'm going to take that magenta and I'm going to start to dust the edges. Just getting in there. Really nice and soft. And you can see that it's kind of bouncing around the edge, which I really love. It almost has a rhythm to it. It's almost musical, if you will. I love this way of shading. I think it just brings a little bit of fun and whimsy into a piece. So just bouncing around on the edges of those petals. Turning the tile. Getting right in there. And just dancing around on the edges of those secondary petals. And you can already see, look at the electricity that this is bringing to the piece. I really love this flower. It's so much fun. So now once I've got that, I'm going to come back into the center and I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of that magenta really, really close to the center head of the flower here. Now once I have that, I'm going to pick up the yellow that we started with. This is that sunburst yellow. And I'm going to use that as my blender this time around. And you can see that what that does is it makes that orange and where that red are meeting a little bit more electric and warm. Look at how pretty that is. It's got a really nice pop to it. So I'm just going to bounce around the outside edges and just blur in those two colors together with that yellow. And I really love this technique of using color to blend color because it really does give quite a vivid feel. So you go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. And then when we come back, we are going to start to work with Woo Woo on the outside. I just love the name of that tangle. I hope that she approves. All right, I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, so here we go. We are going to start to work with Woo Woo on the outside edges here, and I'm going to be using two of my favorite colors for this, and I'm going to add a third into it just for a little bit of vibrancy. So this is the blush pink, and this is PC 928. You're just going to have to trust me on that. But you can see how much I love this pencil. I love the blush pink because it's got an earthier kind of tone. Now I'm also going to be working with the magenta, which is the PC 930, and then I'm also picking up the Crimson Lake. I love this color. It is just so intense and vivid, and what I'm trying to do with Woo Woo is give it a poinsettia kind of feel. So let's go ahead and zoom in on this. And we're going to start to work with the colors here. So let's take that blush pink, and you can see that I'm pretty well sharpened up here, and we're going to create a base for the whole piece. Now I am going to be mindful to not run over the areas in the loops with the black, so I'm just adding that nice base color into the petals here. So I'm just coming in, creating that base color. Now, if you don't have just a regular blush pink, you could use another kind of lighter, more fleshier tone, and that will work too. So check out your Prismacolor set. There's lots of pinks in there that you can play with. And if you don't have a pink that you like, you could always use the magenta and just barely touch the page with it, and that will give you a great base for what we're doing. Okay, so there's my base of pink, and I'm just going to go and do my secondary petals as well, just getting all around there. And you can see that I'm not being overly perfectionistic with this because we're going to do a lot of blending. So I'm going to pick up the magenta, and I'm going to start to go to the outside edge of my petals. You can see I'm coming about halfway down, and what I'm trying to do is bring a blush of that magenta into the piece here. So it just really kind of looks like the tips of the Woo Woo are getting kind of a blush, if you will. I'm just going to turn my tile here, make it work for my hands. Turning the tile. I'm going to keep on turning. I just love this flower. It's such a fun one to work with. So not unlike what we did with the first one in our shading here, once I've had a chance to go all the way around, I'm going to start to run to the center of the piece here and start to add a shadow to that. So let's just get in here. And so I'm just going to start to dust around the center here, and this is also going to bring in that really nice meta highlight all around the piece. And I'll come into those secondary petals and create a shadow. You'll notice that I'm leaving space for the highlight, so tread lightly there so that you keep your highlight going. Now once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up the Crimson Lake. So I'm going to dust the edges with the Crimson Lake. You can see why I love this color so much. It is just, it's like a beautiful glass of wine. You know, it just has that beautiful feel to it. So I'm just dusting down the edges, moving over to the next. And you can already see that this is starting to get really pronounced. It has that kind of poinsettia feel to it. So I'm going all the way around. And you can see I'm not being overly perfectionistic with it. I'm just getting in and getting out. And then I'm going to come in right around the center of where Bronx Cheer is. And there you can see that brings a lot of interest into it. So now, to blur out everything, I'm going to pick back up that blush pink, and I'm going to start to give this about a medium pressure, little circles where the Crimson Lake is meeting the magenta, and then where the magenta is meeting the pink. And you can see that I'm pulling it in towards the center. So look at the difference between here and here. Isn't that amazing how just doing those little circles can make such a big difference? So once again, moving from the outside edge in, using a medium tension, using little circular motions. So it's not a back and forth like that, it's this. Okay? And you know, if you're working with toothy paper, you know, paper that's got a little bit of texture to it, this is also going to help that because it's going to blend in that color a little bit more. Now, you might have to press a little bit harder if you've got toothier paper, but you can definitely make it work for you. I tend to work with really smooth paper. So you can see that I'm working my way around, getting right in there. Turning, turning, turning. Here we go. And if you feel like you've lost a little bit of your pop at the end of the petal here, you can always come back in and just add a little bit of pop very lightly on the tips of your petals just to get them really interesting. A little bit of extra drama there. But you can see why this is such a fun tangle to work with. Now I'm going to come in towards the center and start to blur that out as well. And just get it the way that I want it. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and I'm going to go over to the other side and do this one as well. So you've got your idea now of how to shade it. Go ahead and have some fun with that. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so you can see that I've had a chance to go all the way around with those, and I really love the way that this is starting to look here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called carrying color. And we're going to take this color and we're going to bring it up into our friends right in here. I'm going to bring the magenta up here. And so you're going to see me just start to bring in that magenta right in the belly of these two birds right here. Just a little bit of that magenta right in the belly of the birds. And then towards the back end of each bird, I'm going to bring in some of that crimson, the crimson lake that we were just working with. And just getting a little bit of brightness there. And then I'm going to pick up some of the yellow that we were working with earlier, that sunburst yellow. This is the PC917. And I'm going to start to give them a little bit of a dusting of that yellow right up around their heads, almost like a blush of yellow. And I'll let it run back so that I blend in. And that's going to give them a little bit of animation. Now, if you want to, you can even come in to this area right here and add a little bit of yellow. I might add just a touch of the crimson in there just to make it interesting. And then I'll blur it out a little bit just to keep it fun. Okay, so go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do mine, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work with Poppins. Okay, so we're going to let go of the reds and the oranges here. We're going to start to work in cooler tones. I've got in my hand the light aqua, which is PC992. I also have in my hand the dahlia purple, which is PC1009. And then I also have in my hand the PC932. This is violet. So these three together are going to make a really beautiful combination of a blueberry here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to come down into Poppins. And very similarly to how we would normally shade tipple, you're going to see me come in and start to work on one side with my light aqua. Now once I have the light aqua in, you can see that I'm leaving a light source right in here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that dahlia purple as my medium color and start to just very, very lightly dust it in. Remember when we were talking about using a feather on your page? That's how I want you to think of using this. So you can see that I'm leaving blue on the edges in here. And then I'm going to come in with a little bit of the violet right on the outside edge to give me the drama that I'm looking for. Once I have that, I'm going to pick up that light aqua again, and I'm just very, very lightly starting to blur the two into each other. So the violet and the dahlia purple are starting to blur into each other, and you'll notice that that blue is staying nice and strong. I'm dragging around that color a little bit just to get a little bit of interest, and that's how I love to work with these colors. Look at how beautiful that is. It's just got a nice blueberry feeling. So I'm going to go around to all of my Poppins, and I'm going to do the same thing with all of them. You go ahead and do yours too. So I just love the way that those little blueberries are kind of popping all around the piece. So we are going to pick back up our warm colors here, the yellow that we were working with and the orange and a little bit of that crimson red. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to work inside of our gemstones here. So I'm going to take some of that yellow first and start to bring that into my gemstone here. And let's go ahead and zoom in on that bad boy. And I love the idea of this having a little bit of an autumn-like feel, or almost as if everything is kind of in gemstone colors. So I'm just coming in and bringing in that yellow. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of that orange in here. just to give it a little bit of pronouncement. So it almost gives this almost an amber-like feel. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of that crimson right on the edge. This is that crimson lake. Just to get this to really pop. Now once I have that, I'm going to pick back up that yellow and I'm going to blur the whole thing out so that it really feels like an amber stone. And you can see that that really starts to get that kind of rich color. You can see that I'm coming back in with a little bit of that orange just to give it a little bit more warmth. And I'm going right over that crimson red just to get that drama. Look at how pretty that is. So I'm going to go around to all my gemstones and kind of pop those around in there just to get a little bit of fieriness going. So you can see that that's brought in a really nice kind of bounce around with the orange all the way around the piece. I'm going to come up into my letters here and I'm going to add a little bit of color into my letters here. So you want to make sure that your pencils are really well sharpened up, and all I'm going to do is add a blush of that yellow at the bottom of each letter. And then I'm going to add a little bit of orange right about mid-letter, just to give it some interest in here. And if you want, you can go into your circles if you used peace as your word. The other thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm going to come in with a little bit of that yellow and start to just add it right into the banner here a little bit. So you can see there'll be a little dusting of it in the banner. Just adding a little bit of that orange in there as well, just to get it to pop off of the background. Okay, so go ahead and do yours, and then when we come back, we're going to start to add a whole new color into this piece. So one of the things that I love to do is I love to add a color that has not been added to a piece yet, because it will take the chaos that is happening here and really just give it a little bit of containment. So what I have in my hand here is the parrot green. This is PC 1006, and I love this color because it's really going to bring a lot of drama to the piece, but it's also going to solidify it. So the way that I'm going to work with parrot green is, you can see that I'm really well sharpened up, and I'm going to start to use it as a background color. I'm just trying to get my camera to focus here. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in right underneath my banner, and you can see that I'm working on the side of the pencil, little circles here so that we get that soft mist of color. You can see how far back I am on that pencil. I'm not towards the top. I'm actually really far back to give myself that looseness that I need to actually work with the pencil. So I'm just dusting it in around the banner, bringing that in, coming up around the sides, working around the birds. And once again, I've forgotten to put the orange in their beaks. Many of you know, who take my regular classes when I teach live, I always forget to do the beaks. I don't know why. I'll come back and get those later. So once I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and start to press a little bit harder around the edges. So this is known as perimeter shading. And what this does is it contains the piece in a really nice way. I'm just going to turn my tile to make it work for my hands here. I'm just using a medium pressure and starting to work with that. I'm going to get right around in here, start to give that a nice pressure. And you can already see that that's starting to calm down this whole thing. What was once extremely busy is now starting to feel a little bit more contained. Starting to work my way around the edges in here. Nice shadows around the top. And going around the edge. Now once I've got that, you know me, it's all about the pressure, right? So I'm going to come in and start to give this a little bit more pressure right on the edge. So I'm just getting in there, bringing a little bit more pressure around the edge. And you can already see that that's really starting to get a nice drama to it. Going around. Now once I've got that, I'm going to pick up some white, and this is going to help me to blend in any of that roughness that I have going on in the piece here. So I love to work with white when you have really beautiful kind of aquas or turquoise. Those really do respond well to the white, and I'm going to be doing some wallpaper in here, and you can do whatever tangle is speaking to you today, but I am going to add some wallpaper into this piece here. So I'm just coming in, getting that started here. You can see that I'm getting a really nice soft blend with that white. It's really starting to blur everything out and give it a nice feel. Coming up to the top, really getting that nice soft blend in there. Now before I add any of my tangling that I'm going to do in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a blush of yellow into this really pretty kind of peacock green that we have here. And the reason for that is I want it to feel like it's a watercolor. So I'm just going to dust in a little bit of that yellow we've been working with all throughout, just to give it that kind of blur of watercolor. And I can come back in with a little bit of that white and soften it up. Which is really beautiful. And I think I'll even add some up by my birds, just to get it to have a little bit more of that interest. It almost gives it a glow that it didn't have before. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my peacock green. Now normally what I like to do is I like to work with printemps, and I did use it in the first one, but I'm really feeling like I want to use floors today for my tangulation of this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come right down the center here, and divide the space. And so when you're doing wallpaper, you're tangling with the actual color that you've been coloring with. So I'm just using that as my piece, and then I'm going to come through and just start to make a little grid behind my little birdies. And give this grid-like feel in here. Once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and go horizontally here. So I'll start by coming down from the bottom and working my way up as much as I can. And this might be a little tricky for some of you, so really just take your time with it. What I love about floors is that you really can't mess it up. It's just kind of this sweet little tangle. And then what I'll do is wherever my squares are, I'm just going to add little dots. And I think that gives it kind of this festive feel. It's very happy. And look at what that does for the background. It really gives it a nice texture that it wouldn't have had before. Now in my original, I did a little bit of printemps in there, and look at how pretty it is with the printemps, with the spirals. So fun. But you can use, any tangle that you like for doing your wallpaper in a piece. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to add just a little bit more to the piece, just for shading. Okay, so I have picked up a graphite pencil and a tortillon. Many of you know that I don't normally like to work with the graphite pencil, but because we're at the end of the piece here, we're going to be adding just a few little details to make it a little bit more interesting. Let's come into the banner here. And what I'm going to do with my banner is I'm going to just do a little dusting of graphite to create a little bit of a shadow underneath the main part of the banner. I'll pick up my tortillon. Now if you don't have a tortillon, a Q-tip works really well to do this kind of work. Or you could use your white pencil just to blur out everything. That works as well too. So you can see that that gave a little bit of shadow. I'm going to come back in and give this a little bit of a push. Get a little bit more drama going on there. So that we have a little bit more darkness around the outside edge of the banner. So you can see that I'm just getting that in there and underneath as well. And then blurring it out with your tortillon. You're going to see me come into where the top part of this is, and I'm just ever so lightly giving this a little bit of a dusting. And you can see that that's going to give that some interest. Gives that a little bit of dimension that it wouldn't normally have. I'm going to come up into my little birdies and give them a little bit of graphite in their beaks. And then I'm going to start to come down to where my gemstones are. And you're going to see me just lightly dust a little bit of graphite in at the bottom. I'll take my tortillon and add a little bit of that softness in there. I'm going to go a little bit heavier towards the bottom. And I'm going to go all throughout and do all of my gemstones just like that. So you go ahead and do yours as well. You can already see that that's really pronounced those gemstones and given them a little bit of pop. Let's go ahead and come back to our little pieces in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in right in where this kind of plus sign is, right in the center with a little bit of graphite. And I'll go ahead and blur that in with my tortillon. And I'm going to do that for all of these pieces in here, but I'm going to come back in and just add a little bit of intensity right into these areas and then blur those out as well. So go ahead and do yours just like that. And when we come back, we're going to add a little bit into our Poppins. So let's come into Poppins here. Let's go over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little dusting of that graphite into Poppins on one side and then just blur it in. Notice how I'm leaving a little bit of light on the other side. So just a little bit of graphite and a blur, leaving your light source on the left-hand side. So super light and super easy. So go ahead and do your Poppins just like that. Now I'm feeling like I want to add just a little bit more color into those little pieces right in here. So I'm going to pick up my light aqua. This is the PC992, and I'm also going to pick up some of that Dahlia purple, which is the PC1009. I'm going to come into this area right in here, and I'm just going to dust a little bit of that blue into just these little highlights in here. Then right in the center, I'm going to add just a dusting of that purple just to give it a little bit of a pop. And I'll come in and blur that out with a little bit of that light aqua. So I'll be doing that to the rest of mine. And then the other thing that I'm going to do in here is I'm going to come into this flower that we have down here, and just like what I just did over in our little Poppins, I'm going to add a little bit of blue, and then I'm going to add a little bit of that purple right on the edge, and I'm going to blur it out. And I just love how that just gives a little bit of interest to the center. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine. Okay, so if you're anything like me, I love to work with the white gel pen, and I have the Mizu Love pen in my hand here. This is such a great pen to add highlights to your piece. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in towards the center here, and I'm going to just give my gemstones a little bit of pizzazz by putting in a little bit of white. So I'll just come in and add a little bit of white in here as well, and a couple of dots, which is really fun. You're going to see me just kind of dance around into some of these gemstones here, which are really, really fun. And I'll come over here as well. Now if I zoom out a little bit, you can see that I actually added a little bit of blue into the center of this little fragment that we have here. And so I'm going to just add a little light source in there for interest. I'll come over here and do the same. So let's just make sure that's on screen for you. And I'll come over to the other one as well and add that. Now, one of the things that I like to do with these is I'm going to also add a little white into the black. And I'll come over here as well. If you want to add a highlight into your blueberries, you can add a little highlight into your blueberries just to get them to be interesting. Coming over here and doing the same. And then if I zoom out, you can see that that gives a really nice kind of wateriness or sheen to the piece. So go ahead and finish up yours. I'm going to finish up mine. Just like so. We're going to add one little last bit of shading into the piece. So I waited to the end for this because I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get our hands completely dirty while doing this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick back up my graphite pencil here, and I'm just going to do a soft perimeter shade right around where our border is on the inside, and you're going to see that that's just going to give this a little bit of containment here. I'm just going to dust over here a little bit with my graphite, and you can see that I'm going very, very lightly with this. And I'll even come in just around some of the flowers in here just to give them a little bit of a shadow. And that's about it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tortillon and I'm going to blur that in a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's going to give a little dimension to where there was none. It was just kind of a flat white before, and now this is going to give it just a little bit of shadow. Coming in over here and coming in over here. Now if you want to make some of your shadows a little darker, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to leave it kind of soft. I like a little soft shadow, nothing too heavy. I think that's really nice. It's got a nice feeling to it. I might just add a little shadow right here to where my little circles are that have kind of fallen off of the outside of the page here, or outside of the border. And I might add a little bit of shadow right underneath where this flower is right here, these petals, just to make them have a little bit more three-dimensionalness. So go ahead and play. Decide where you want to add your shadows, and when we come back, we are going to finish up our piece. Okay, so here we are, and let's bring in the original too so that you can see where we went with this. The first one I actually added a little bit of gold into it, and if you want to add gold into your piece, you absolutely can. I always like to change things up and do things a little bit differently. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my chop into this, and I think I'm going to put my chop right out here in the corner. And your chop is just your initials, just to show that you've completed your piece here. And what I want to do is I want to invite you to take a moment to enjoy what you have sitting in front of you and see if there's a part of this that really resonates with you or that you really enjoy. And then I want you to come back to your word and just let that kind of wash over you and see if there is a feeling that you get from this word that makes you feel inspired or excited to cultivate that quality. And maybe think of one thing today that you can do to start to cultivate that quality in your life. Because your word of the year is not just for today, it's going to be for the next year. And it's always nice to start building the habit of cultivating one thing each day that brings that particular quality to life for you. So I hope that you've enjoyed the class. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up or a nice review. Better yet, hit the subscribe button and you'll get notified whenever I add new classes here. Okay? And please come and share your work with me over on the Facebook page that we have over at the Tangled Yogi Art Community page. This is a really wonderful community that we have, and we would love to see your work. Well, that's it for me. Happy holidays and Happy New Year to you. I look forward to seeing you in 2023. Have a good one.